go back to Erica, and it talks about rotator cuff issues. Actually, we have one from Erica and one from Brandon that have rotator cuff issues. This is a particular client of hers. Says she's not a candidate for surgery. Her other shoulder has impediments of some sort. She doesn't get into that. That have gotten better with some of our work. I presume it's more physical work. Many people come to me with existing like knee issues of various types, type hips, hammies. I would be interested in having ideas to help others that will be complementary to enhance the yoga and other training I provide. So I guess maybe to for somebody like, let's say, that they're not a candidate for surgery at this point. What could we use, or what could you use as part of the body mapping system to enhance the other things like the yoga that she's providing to progress this person with rotator cuff issues? Because I'm sure that's one that you see a lot.
Yeah, and so there's two parts to this. First off, let me just say my experience of most surgeons, and this is a blanket statement, most surgeons love cutting you open and cutting something out, right? Most of them, because it's their reason for being, right? It's what they do, right? A surgeon does surgery. Right. If a surgeon has said that there's no reason to cut you open, then that's telling me that there actually isn't a structural deficit of any kind to be repaired, which straight away hints back to then, okay, that's the body has taken that back, right? The body has taken the function back. And the body does that via its neurological system, and it does that in response to sensory input being impaired. Boom. Now let's move that on to the second part. Sensory input being impaired. Where can that come from? Most commonly occurs in yoga practitioners through joint compression. Okay, because when you take the surfaces of or the joint contact surfaces and you push them together, you reduce proprioception. You reduce the body's awareness of itself relative to itself. Okay, so now but what most people don't understand, for example, is I can compress your wrist and make you weaker in the legs. I can compress your wrist and make you weaker in the neck, in the back, in the shoulders, right? Because it's about, and this is where it comes back to the old kinetic chain concept. A weakness in the wrist means that if I try and lift something too heavy, I may actually damage myself. So my body will down-regulate my shoulder musculature to make sure that my wrist can't lift up very much. Right? They're working in cahoots. They're together. So understand this then. Any time, so many yoga, and I'm not anti-yoga, by the way. I think it's actually a good system of exercise, but only if it's done in conjunction with the concept of you are doing things that inherently create compression in the body. That compression must be undone, and yoga doesn't tend to do that. So one of the downsides of yoga is it tends to seek flexibility. Right, it tends to see. So it's doing two things, right? Because flexibility in itself can create destabilization of the body and can create a reduction in mapping, right? Because when we take the two ends of a muscle further apart, we actually reduce the neurological tonus to that muscle, right? So in other words, its awareness of where it is in space goes down. So now we're doing a lot of stretching, reducing our awareness in space. We're doing a lot of compression in joints such as the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, and very often the neck in certain asanas that you're holding. And that also reduces where you are in space, or reduces your awareness of where you are in space. The two things combined lead to yoga, for some people, not being the optimum exercise modality because it exacerbates problems that they already have. Okay. Even in those people that are very good at yoga, I've been able to show yoga practitioners who are stuck in certain parts of reaching certain asanas that they couldn't get into, and actually being able to show them that just by creating simple decompressions around the wrist, some around the shoulders, some of these can be done in seconds, and that they're suddenly able to, if you've been unable to touch your toes, for example, or unable to do a certain thing, that just by decompressing a wrist, suddenly you're able to touch your toes. Why is that possible? And there's a story to why that's possible. But essentially, that's my rather long-winded answer to that. Is that there are two components here. One is to do with the stretching itself, reducing the efficiency and effectiveness of the map, and the other is to do with the compression. So anything you can do to decrease the compression in the joints that's going to lead a hell of a long way to getting you in the right place.
And so let's take that a little bit further. this goes to Brandon's question. Let's say they do have that they do have a partial or complete tear. They have not been surgically repaired. Is there something once the damage has been done that you can help facilitate and regain some motion there, even though there is an actual structural damage?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the tissue is healing, you know, human beings have been injuring themselves for millennia, right? Kind of thousands of millennia, right? So we know that you can recover from injury. The reason why a lot of people become chronic with those things is because they try and go back to what they deem to be full function too early, right? So, you know, and again, this is going to be nothing to any physical therapist who's going to go like, duh, yeah, simplest answer, but first off, work within the realms within kind of either pain-free or up to about a 3 on the pain scale, right? If you go much beyond that, all of the guarding and all of the rewiring to get you around the pain is going to kick in, which means that you're going to create functional discrepancies that you don't want to have to deal with later, but they're going to be laid down because your body doesn't like pain, and it's just going to rewire the circuits. And very often you're going to end up in more pain from the rewiring of doing something wrong than you are from the injury. You remember from when we run the BodyMAP program, the difference between a caress and a slap, right? I know you enjoyed that a lot, right? It's kind of the same thing. So the difference between a caress and a slap is the speed that the stimuli is approaching the body, right? It's the same with kind of reducing threat to the rest of the body. Is quite simply do the movement slower and over shorter ranges, right? That's the simplest answer. Alongside of that, obviously, you can do everything in your power to increase the sensory input. And as you increase sensory input, so again, respiratory, visual, vestibular, proprioceptive, spatial, as all of these things improve, your healing will go up. And I've seen this time and again. Healing is almost directly proportional to the amount of sensory stimuli being engaged in the healing process. Okay. And so if you can bring all the senses to bear upon it, your brain actually takes care of business a lot faster.